Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Bit of a personal one this. I'm aware that there's been a load of new subscribers recently, so thank you so much for that. However, a lot of you think that I am actually Irish. I'm not, but I am here to tell you all about the Irish connection. Stay tuned. Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. What a stunning evening this is. This is a Tuesday evening when I'm recording this. And it says... No, that can't be real. Maybe it is right. It's 18 degrees Celsius here in Ireland. I don't think it's ever been 18 degrees Celsius. I mentioned Ireland there. That segues lovely into what I want to talk about. As I mentioned in the intro, it's really surprising. And I'll take it as a compliment as well, because I love Ireland so much, and I'm proud to be classed as Irish, and indeed many of my friends and colleagues who I've made since moving to Ireland 23 years ago quite often would say I'm more Irish than them. Anyway, I'm aware that I should really divulge the truth behind the Irish accent, or the Irish lilt. I certainly don't think I sound Irish, but any time I phone back home to my place of birth and where I was reared, and in fact I didn't leave Newcastle upon Tyne. I've just revealed where I'm from, northeast of England. I didn't leave Newcastle until I was 31 years old, I think. And here's the story behind it. Stick with me, okay? These type of videos I call a bit of a stocking filler, because I think at the time of when you're watching this, well, if it's just been released, I think I'm away doing Route 66 at the minute, and I hope I'm having a wonderful time. You'll hear all about that soon enough. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you the background of how I ended up in Ireland, especially for all those new subscribers. It's quite, well, I think it's quite an interesting story. So here we go, right? When I was 6 years old, we lived in a housing estate called Chapel Park Estate in Newcastle upon Tyne. A lovely, very pleasant, newly built housing estate. Our next door neighbours were Irish, and those next door neighbours, they had daughters who used to babysit myself and my sister. Like I say, I was only 6 years old at the time. I forget the daughters' names, but I remember the name of the father who lived next door to us. He was called Dennis. I'm not going to reveal a surname just because of GDPR, but he was called Dennis. I forget his wife's name. Anyway, the most incredible people, not at 6 years old, obviously, that I could make much of a judgment on the character of people. But I know my mum and dad were just huge friends with them living next door to us. However, in the 70s, and this was mid-70s, a lot of the Irish came over to England. They were nicknamed Tom McAdam's Army because they came over to England, well, to build the infrastructure, the motorway networks and everything in England. Now, when that work was complete, these Irish people, Dennis and his wife and his 2 daughters, they moved back to Donegal in Ireland. My mum and dad, to say they were devastated was a huge understatement. And we heard the names of these next door neighbours, well, until I left home when I was 17 or 18. My mum and dad would always affectionately talk about Dennis and his wife, okay? So, still never having been to Ireland, I joined the BBC. A lot of you know that story. If you don't, that's maybe for another video, because that's a long story. I joined the BBC as a cameraman when I was 18. My first job out of Newcastle with the BBC was to, yeah, you guessed it, Ireland, with none other than the legend Jack Charlton. Jack also hailed from my native Newcastle upon Tyne. In fact, at one stage we lived in the same village as each other, which was a bit mad. So Jack used to love his fishing, as those Irish people watching this will know that. In fact, legend has it there are still, especially on the west coast of Ireland, in pubs and restaurants, there are still uncashed cheques on the walls of these pubs and restaurants in frames where Jack knew rightly what he was doing, that if he tried to pay for a round of drinks with a cheque, the chances were the bartender or the landlord wouldn't cash the cheque because they'd have a piece of paper with his name on, so it would be more valuable to put it in the frame. And indeed, like I say, some of those cheques still exist. I've seen them. So I came over to Ireland with Jack Charlton. We were filming a story about underprivileged kids in Newcastle upon Tyne going fishing for the first time. We were only filming for a week. It made a wonderful documentary. I fell in love with Ireland, of course, still very much aware how much these Irish people meant to my parents, however many years previous. So I'd always been quite curious about Ireland, and there you go. So that was my first visit to Ireland. Then, in 1991, when I was 21 years old, or I should have said, by the way, at the time we came over with Jack Charlton, he was Irish manager. And I think around the same period, 1991, there was a film, a very famous film in Ireland released called The Commitments. Now, I was massive into me music at the time. I used to play in bands, blues stuff and everything. So when The Commitments film was released and we saw it in Newcastle in 1991, I thought, right, that's it. I've seen Ireland with Jack Charlton. This is incredible. If this type of music exists in Ireland and this type of vibe, I've got to go back. I've got to see more of Ireland, basically. And actually, I've often said that single-handedly, I think that film, The Commitments, did more for Ireland than any sort of trade link or tourist board or anything like that, because certainly in the north of England, when we saw this coming out of Ireland, we just thought, these guys are just like us. You know, we're really going to get on with them. And so I was even more curious to get back to Ireland. Lo and behold, I went on a lad's holiday a couple of years later with my Geordie friends. That's what they're called in Newcastle upon Tyne, Geordies. And we met up with we didn't meet up with them, we just happened to be drinking in the same pubs as these Irish lads. We became friends on the holiday, matched each other pint for pint, you know how it is. And then we kept in touch, so that was my excuse with my mates to go back over to Ireland. And we did, and this went on for over a year. However, I got a little bit too involved with one of those boys' sisters. Enough said about that, okay? And then everything obviously went pear-shaped. It went sour. And I was fairly gutted about that, because I sort of knew that I'd ended my one-way ticket into Ireland. I was always curious about Ireland. And God, this is such a stunning evening, isn't it? So, a couple of years later, I was at a Christmas party with the BBC. What age would I have been now? 27, 28, something like that. I was at a Christmas party with the BBC. Lo and behold, who was I sat next to on my table at the Christmas party? An Irish girl, an Irish woman. And, well, to say we fell in love instantly was actually a bit of an understatement. We didn't even see the Christmas party. We left. We got on so well before the party started. We left and went to the pub next door and had the most incredible evening. And we were out until 4 o'clock in the morning. Took her home, kissed her on her cheek, and went our own way. However, the following day, I met her in the BBC canteen, and she was shaking. She was so nervous about seeing me. I'll never forget it. She spilled a cup of coffee. And I sort of couldn't function because I just knew this girl was, well, I hope my wife isn't watching this, because she'll be blushing, but she was like nobody else I'd ever met in my life. I absolutely fell head over heels in love, okay? So, now, don't judge me, because when you fall in love, you can't help it. The problem was, I was with somebody else at the time, and so was my now wife. So we had to break the news gently. By the way, this was like a week before Christmas, because it was a Christmas party. So my now wife went home for Christmas, and I spent Christmas with, well, this is terrible really, but I'll tell you how it is. I spent a Christmas with a person I didn't want to be with anymore. Like I say, don't judge me. I can't help falling in love. There have been many songs written about it, in fact. And in fact, anyway, when I get to the end of this story, you'll see that everything happened for a reason, and I really do hope that our respective partners at that time are leading as happy a life as we both are. It was meant to be, and hopefully you'll see that by the end of the story. So, my wife went back to Dublin for Christmas, and on New Year's Day she rang me. She was walking down a beach in Donegal, weirdly, which is where the people we lived next to when I was 6 years old all hailed from. Weird how it all ties in, isn't it? That's what I mean. Ireland has been calling me since I was 6 years old, and I haven't even got to the best part yet, right? So she rang me on New Year's Day and she said, I'm not playing games here. Now, we had a few rendezvous before she left to go home for Ireland at the Christmas time. We'd had a few sort of secret rendezvous just to see, really we were sort of both intrigued as to how we would feel like this about each other. And no funny business, nothing like that had happened, nothing. We would just, we were only happy breathing each other's air. It was ridiculous. I'd never experienced this in my life, and it was the same for her. So anyway, she rang me on the New Year's Day. She said, I'm not playing games. She said, I'm putting all of my cards on the table here. She said, I'm walking down a beach here in Donegal with a fella I don't want to be with anymore. I want to be with you. And I said, and I've just spent Christmas with a girl I don't want to be with anymore, and I want to be with you. So she flew back over a few days later. We had a huge embrace and a kiss, and declared our love for each other, and that's where it went from there. So obviously I then had to inform the girlfriend I was with. Didn't go too well, and my wife had to inform the boyfriend she was with. In fairness, he was lovely. He kept in touch with her for 6 months, just basically saying, if it doesn't work out between you and this new fella, would you take me back? He couldn't have been nicer. So there I am, married to an Irish girl. 21 months later I married her, and then of course it was me who, my wife had done everything to get out of Ireland and move to the UK to start her career in the BBC. Did I mention that's where we met? I cannot remember that. Then of course I said, no. I said, I'm going to leave the BBC and we're going to move to your country because I absolutely love it. And in fact, one of the weirdest things when we did move, we decided over a cup of coffee on a Monday morning, living in Newcastle upon Tyne, that we would move. Well, I decided that we would move to Ireland, okay? Long story short, after we'd moved to Ireland and we actually built a house out in the country, it was supposed to be a renovation of an old farmhouse, except the builder took the roof off and the whole thing fell down. So we ended up building from scratch, but it was the best thing again, which sort of happened, okay? So, like I say, we decided to move to Ireland over a cup of coffee. But it took us, after we built the house, it took us 4 years to decide what colour to paint the house, which has sort of been the story of our lives since. We can make huge decisions very, very easily, but the littlest of decisions, oh my God, what a disaster. So we both are currently still very, very happy, touch wood. 4 kids later, we still live in Ireland. And here's the twist to the tale, okay? 2 weeks, and I suspect this is what's actually prompted me to make this video. 2 weeks ago, my wife saw the car of her dreams. She's always fancied one of these, okay? I don't understand why, but each to their own. And it's an old Land Rover Defender, you know, the old style ones. So she saw one for sale, promptly went to view it, test drive it and buy it. And I mean, this is how I firmly believe my life is mapped out, and this was meant to be. Who owned the bloody thing? Only the guitarist from The Commitments, who played what's his name? Oh Jesus, his name will come to me in a minute. He played the guitarist in The Commitments. So it was him who sold the Jeep to my wife. And I still think, what is going to happen next? Like, what on earth is going to happen next? Whoops, watch that branch. That nearly happened next. I nearly got knocked off my bloody bike. Glenn Hansard is the name I'm looking for. He was the guitarist in the Commitments film. So there you have it. That's how I ended up. Oh, Jesus, indicate, will you? For God's sake. That's how I ended up here. And I am still hugely, madly, deeply in love with Ireland. In fact, some would say my blood runs green. Tell you a quick story. One of the first jobs I went off to, and I know I've said this story before, so forgive me if you've heard it before, but again, for the new subscribers who haven't, one of the first jobs I ever got sent off to do here in Ireland as a cameraman, it was a 14-week job. It was a documentary series all about the islands off the west coast of Ireland. It was like a dream job for me. It really was. And as I've mentioned, I used to like a bit of singing and whatever else. So we were on this island called Clare Island. And I was up every night with the locals singing and whatever. And they had a party for us leaving at the end of the week, as they did back then. Well, every night's a party on a bloody island. Copious amounts of the black stuff with the white head on. And on the final night, they had a big send-off for us, so of course I give it my all. And I'd seen this old boy sort of looking at me, this really lived-in face. You know what I'm talking about. His face was like a pencil sketch. And blackheads, you know. And he'd be looking at me all week whilst I was up singing and saying very little. In fact, saying nothing. And on the final night, after I'd finished singing and thanked the locals for such a wonderful week and an even better send-off, he came over to the stage, and I thought, oh, here we go, I'm going to get both barrels now. And he said, do you know what your problem is, boy? And I said, no, go on. He says, you're more Irish than the feckin' rest of us. And there you go, folks. I shall end on that note, because I took that as a massive, massive compliment. I love this Emerald Isle. I love the people, love the country, love the food, love the vibe. Now, unfortunately, I started liking the black stuff too much, but that's another story. Right. I will end the video. Thanks so much for tuning in, folks. My videos come out 8 o'clock every Saturday morning. So if you enjoyed this one, and again, apologies if it was a little bit too personal, but if you did enjoy it, think about liking it and subscribing. When I get back from Route 66, or wherever the hell I am at the moment, I have lots more videos to come. So ride safe, everybody. Have a great week, and sure, we'll chat soon. Dave Perry, WheelieGoodTV, over and out.